Well, here we are again. We all survived the last video and made it back for another one. I sure hope you realize that even though learning the truth about breast cancer is maddening, it's also empowering. My only goal in delivering this education is to ensure that you know the truth about the current state of affairs. I give you the whole story and the whole truth. How you use it is entirely up to you. So you can see that today I have both a parasol for sunny weather and an umbrella for rainy weather. And that's because in a way, we'll be talking about weather today, both good and bad. And that's kind of apropos because I happen to be under the weather today. I've got a cold, but I never let such things get in my way of productivity. I like to keep up my momentum. So class is in session even if your professor is a bit sick. The great thing about our classroom here on YouTube is that I won't infect you by being in actual physical contact with you. So we have worked our way through our unit on breast cancer step by step. Of course, that's the only way you can possibly really learn anything. And that's why I constantly implore you to watch all my videos in order, starting with the very first one. If you get this education in that way, you will have a very good forecast. If you jump around randomly and watch the videos out of order, you'll completely sabotage your entire menopause education and have a very dismal forecast. So your forecast is your future, and your future is your prognosis. And that's precisely what we'll be discussing in this video tutorial today. So this is video number 399. It's the 44th video in the breast cancer unit. And as you know, in my book, chapter 30 is the chapter on breast cancer, but as you also know, you get way more detail in these videos. So everybody's so afraid of breast cancer. It is undoubtedly most women's greatest fear. And I just want to explore why that's the case. As you've seen in the units on endometrial uterine cancer and cervical cancer, there are always statistics on the survival rates for cancer. And knowing those survival rates helps you understand how mild or how aggressive that particular cancer is. Of course, for every organ in your body, there are many different cancers that can develop. And they are certainly not all equal in their degree of aggression or oppression or what have you. No prognostic data or survival rates pertain to all cancers of a given organ. So the 5-year survival rate for one kind of breast cancer differs from the 5-year survival rate for another kind of breast cancer. And likewise, the prognosis for one kind of breast cancer differs from the prognosis of other kinds of breast cancer. But overall survival rates are still very informative. And most cancers do conform to the 5-year survival rates for a particular class of cancers. So you can think of overall survival rates in the same way you think of the average weather conditions for any given place. You think of Seattle as a rainy place. You think of Florida as a sunny place. Neither one is always rainy or always sunny, but the rainy versus sunny nature of each is typical most of the time. So today we're going to examine the survival rates for breast cancer. And I want to start with a quiz question to get you thinking. Breast cancer is a topic and disease of great concern and fear for women because A, survival rates for breast cancer are very low. B, available treatments for breast cancer are inadequate for saving lives. C, the vast majority of breast cancers are diagnosed at very advanced stages. D, breast cancer is one of the most aggressive cancers. E, compared to uterine and cervical cancer, breast cancer has the worst survival rates. F, breast cancer is most commonly hereditary and therefore highly likely if you have a positive family history of it. G, breast cancer is caused by the estrogen that our own bodies produce. H, there are very few preventive measures for avoiding breast cancer. I, all of the above. J, none of the above. Now, if you've been watching all of my videos in order, like you're supposed to, that should have been really easy for you. And that's because one of my teaching strategies is to come back to things from different angles. Not only does that provide repetition and review for you, it also teaches you how to arrive at answers using logic rather than misconceptions. So here's the quiz question again with the answer in bold. All right, let's begin by designating the way in which cancers are assessed in terms of prognosis. Prognosis is the word we use in medicine to mean forecast. Prognosis is the likely course or outcome of a cancer. It's a lot like a weather forecast. It's a prediction of what's coming. Will the weather be delightful, or will the weather be dismal? Will the cancer regress, or will the cancer progress? So you can think of the prognosis of a cancer as being sunny and bright, just like a good weather day, or you can think of the prognosis as being rainy and dark, just like a bad weather day. So there are many items included under the general term prognosis. Of course, since cancer is something that people associate with death, the most important prognostic factor for any cancer is the survival rate. And part of what determines the survival rate is the recurrence rate. Because face it, a recurrence of cancer is the very thing that is most likely to affect prognosis in general and survival in particular. So a recurrence is like a long, rainy season that seems to never end. In the world of cancers, the most common statistic for purposes of prognosis is the 5-year survival rate. We use it for many things. We use the 5-year survival rate to compare treatment success at different stages of cancer. We use the 5-year survival rate to compare the treatment success of one cancer compared to another cancer. We use the 5-year survival rate to designate degrees of aggression for cancers. So the 5-year survival rate is everything in the context of prognosis or forecast for breast cancer. But stop a minute. I've used this prop many times. It's a timeline that demonstrates how long it takes for a cancer, including breast cancer, to grow large enough to diagnose whether by self-breast exam, clinical breast exam, or mammogram. Cancers do not pop up overnight. Regardless of whether they are primary cancer or a recurrent cancer, every diagnosis of breast cancer detects a cancer that actually began 7 to 10 years before. Some began as much as 20 years before. But cancers brew just like the weather does. And regardless of how you discover it, at the time of diagnosis, every breast cancer has always been brewing for a long time before rearing its ugly head. Sometimes you can see it coming before it hits because there are subtle signs or symptoms that are like clouds foreboding an oncoming shower. But that is not typical of breast cancer. Most commonly, breast cancer produces no symptoms until very late in the game. In the vast majority of cases, you have nothing at all to make you suspect breast cancer subjectively. The only reason you find it early is because of objective findings on self-breast exam, clinical breast exam, or mammogram. So it feels like a sudden downpour when it comes out of nowhere. Just as you rely on the weather forecast to discover an impending thunderstorm, you rely on these screening techniques to discover breast cancer early. And the time of discovery dictates the prognosis. So a good forecast would imply a high 5-year survival rate, while a bad forecast would imply a low 5-year survival rate. But stop a minute. 5 years, isn't that long a period of time? I don't know about you, but 5 years seems like a blip in time to me. It transpires in a flash. I think that means I'm old. But unless a cancer is notorious for very, very short survival after diagnosis, it just doesn't seem like 5 years is a long enough time to really capture the forecast of a cancer. And this is precisely the case with breast cancer. So what are the 5-year survival rates for breast cancer? Is it a cancer that has very low survival rates at all stages? Is that why women are so afraid of it and doctors are so aggressive in their treatment of it? If you look at things from a place of logic like I do, that's exactly what you would expect. And it would make sense to aggressively overtreat a cancer that is extremely deadly. But oddly, such is not the case. Here's a chart for the 5-year survival rates for cervical cancer, endometrial uterine cancer, and breast cancer. If we look at it stage by stage, you see that breast cancer has the absolute best survival rates at every single stage. This means that breast cancer is the least aggressive and the most successfully treated. It is also a cancer that is most commonly diagnosed at a very early stage. And notice that there is no such thing as stage 0 for cervical or endometrial uterine cancer, nor any other cancer that I know of. So while the current perception is that breast cancer is like a huge, devastating, deadly inundation or hurricane, it really isn't. It's more like a passing storm. So even though the 5-year survival rate is the standard way of assessing the prognosis of breast cancer, I find it to be inadequate. I think it needs to be the 10 or 20-year survival rate. Well, then with such early diagnosis and such successful treatment and such excellent survival rates, why is everybody in such a tizzy over breast cancer? Is our reaction to breast cancer consistent with its prognosis? Would you react to a forecast for a passing storm the same way you would react to a forecast for a massive inundation or hurricane? Is our reaction to breast cancer consistent with its actual prognosis? Or are we reacting to it as if it's a lot worse than it really is? There's a quote by John Nesbitt that claims, "The most reliable way to forecast the future is to understand the present." And that is absolutely true. But if we ignore the realities of the current prognosis of breast cancer and respond to it in a way that is inconsistent with its true forecast, we forfeit our opportunity to prepare appropriately. I think that instead of reducing prognosis to just the 5-year survival rate, it would be better to use terms that are more specific. Why not use the words remission, recovery, survival, and cure? 5-year survival rates are just too broad. Just think of all the terms we have for weather forecasts, for water that falls from the sky alone. We have light rain, sprinkle, showers, thunderstorm, downpour, hurricane. Each one evokes a different kind of expectation, degree of preparation, and level of anticipation. They are not all the same forecast. So why is 5-year survival rate the only prognostic indicator for breast cancer? I often wonder if the 5-year survival rate is used as a way of camouflaging the truth about long-term prognosis beyond 5 years. If you pay close attention to the words that oncologists use, you'll realize that they never use the word cure. Instead of saying the word cure, they use the word response. Sometimes they use phrases like reduce the tumor burden or tumor response, but they never say cure, even when there is a cure. Now, this is odd given the fact that the public focuses only on cure, and so do the media, the fundraising sponsors, and the actual funds. All sorts of things are done for the sake of cure. Runs for the cure, walks for the cure, races for the cure. In no area of medicine is this more prevalent than breast cancer. But with all this focus on cure, there is no focus on cause. As I said before, instead of having runs for the cure, we should have runs from the cause. I think we're running in the wrong direction, or maybe we should just stand still for the cure. And that's because breast cancer is a disease for which we have excellent 5-year survival rates and a whole slew of treatments, even though we don't know its cause. Can you imagine how much better it could be if we did know the cause? So, the bottom line is that breast cancer has the best 5-year survival rates of all the cancers pertinent to menopause. Yet, we still do not know its cause. And all the focus is on cure rather than on cause. So, even though everybody focuses on the rainy aspects of breast cancer, there are many more things about it that are sunny. 2 parasols. I love parasols. And I hope that my prognosis with this cold is sunnier tomorrow too. I don't like to slow down, that's for sure. And this brings us to the end of the part of this unit dealing with actual breast cancer. Next, we're going to delve into your options for preventing breast cancer. So in the upcoming videos, I will dedicate individual videos to each option category, including diet, lifestyle, exercise, vitamins, minerals, and supplements, herbs, medications, and surgery. Even though the precise cause of breast cancer is unknown, the means of preventing it are not. So be sure to come back for all those videos, and be sure to visit menopausetailor.me. That's where you can find all my educational resources and schedule a consultation to tailor everything to the one and only you. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and be sure to subscribe to my newsletter. And be sure to follow me on social media. I'll be sure to have the first prevention video ready for you when you return. It will be on your dietary options for preventing breast cancer. Bye!